Clarion Books and Harper Audio present Chasing Eruptions, How Volcanologists Maurice and Katja Kraft helped save 60,000 lives, but lost their own. By Curtis Manley. Read by Daniel Henning. A note before we begin. Don't forget to download the accompanying enhancement PDF from your audiobook provider. It contains a map, bibliography, and further resources. To Katja and Maurice, and all who follow their own passions and bring discovery, empathy, and beauty to the world. Curtis Manley. To my dad, who sparked my love of art and science and taught me to follow where curiosity leads. Catherine Roy. The Last Day. Mount Unzen, Japan. June 3rd, 1991, 4:08 p.m. Risk is the very engine of life. If you don't take risks, you've missed out on your own life. Maurice Kraft. As the brown ash flow moved down the mountain, swelling up, hiding the volcano and blotting out the sky, it came closer and closer to where they stood. Maurice and Katja Kraft knew that ash flows like this were much hotter than fire and moved much faster than anyone could run. They had watched other flows earlier that day, watched them from the start as great blocks broke off the hot lava dome at the summit of the mountain and shattered into boulders. As those boulders began to roll, they shattered again and again, disappearing behind a mass of dust that rushed faster and faster down the slope, directly toward Maurice and Katja. But then, at the last moment, each flow had turned to follow the valley of the Mizunashi River. Compared to the flows from earlier that day, this one had grown much larger. So large they knew that only some of it would turn safely away. So large, they surely knew, they could not escape it. In the short time before the flow reached them, did Katja and Maurice look back over the events in their lives that had brought them to this moment on Unzen? Young Katja. Alsace, Eastern France. 1942 to 57. When she was born, she was named Catherine Marie Josephine Conrad. But no one called her that. It was always just Katja. Like many children, Katja was fascinated by pebbles, their shapes and colors and textures. She asked question after question until her mother ran out of answers. When she was 11, she told a friend she would be a volcanologist, but she did not tell her parents. When Katja was a young teen, she and her family explored the extinct cinder cones, lava domes, and sparkling crater lakes of the Chaîne des Puys in the Auvergne region of central France. After that trip, she spoke out loud what she'd decided years before. She wanted to be a scientist. But her parents expected Katja to teach school, just like her mother. So when she was 15, Katja began training to become a teacher. Her dream of studying volcanoes seemed as far away as their cloudy peaks. Young Maurice. Alsace, Eastern France. 1946 to 59. The Earth has always interested me. Some days I lived in the dinosaur era, other days I was with the trilobites. I was crazy about that as a kid. Maurice. Maurice Paul Kraft was born just 13 miles from where Katja lived. When he was 7 years old, his family vacationed in Italy to visit Mount Etna and the volcanic islands nearby. In the Great Crater on Vulcano, they saw steaming vents called fumaroles, crusted orange and yellow from sulfur. On Lipari, they gathered pumice stones and floated them on the waves like tiny boats on a restless sea. One night on Stromboli, Maurice and his father hiked 3 hours to the summit and looked down into the craters. Glowing bits of molten lava exploded into the sky and lit up the dark like fireworks. Boom! Boom! The sharp smell of sulfur filled each breath and clung to their clothes. Boom! Like catching a fever that never goes away, Maurice had caught volcanoes. Even the death and destruction he saw when his family visited the ruins of Pompeii, buried by an eruption of Mount Vesuvius, didn't cool that fever. When Maurice returned home, it was Stromboli he thought about most. He scooped sand into mounds and blew them up with firecrackers, watching the sand spray up and out, covering the ground in all directions and leaving empty craters. He began collecting rocks and minerals, and by the time he was 14, he knew more about them than his teachers did, and he didn't hesitate to say so. Like the time a teacher held up a sample and said it was limestone. Maurice knew it wasn't. He took the rock and scratched the classroom window, something that limestone is too soft to do. Maurice's best friend at school, Roland, was also interested in rocks. And soon, because Maurice talked about volcanoes all the time, Roland caught volcanoes too. Stromboli is a small volcanic Italian island known as the Lighthouse of the Mediterranean because it has erupted almost continuously for thousands of years. Pompeii was an ancient Roman city just 5 miles from the base of Mount Vesuvius. Its soils were rich and fertile due to the ash of long-forgotten eruptions. But then, in 79 AD, Vesuvius erupted again. A column of ash rose so high that it blotted out the sun. Pumice stones fell from the sky for hours, collapsing the roofs of houses and filling the streets. Thousands of people fled the city, but some stayed behind thinking the worst was over. And then, ash flows swept down the volcano's slopes, igniting anything in their path and filling buildings with hot gases and scorching ash. No one who stayed in the city survived, but they're all still there. The buried bodies decayed away, leaving hollows in the ash where they had been. When archaeologists discovered the hollows, they poured in plaster, creating 3D molds. Visitors to the ruins of Pompeii can see the white shapes of adults, children, and a dog who all died when the ash flows rushed into the city nearly 2,000 years ago. Katya and the Wall of Death. Alsace, Eastern France. August 1957. Even if she would become a teacher like her mother, Katya was not really like her at all. Every year, at the end of August, the carnival came to town. There were bumper cars and candy sellers, and if you were lucky, you might win a chicken or rabbit or a pair of pigeons. But the year Katya turned 15, there was something new. The Wall of Death. It was a wire cage in the shape of a tall cylinder, and inside were stuntmen driving fast in motorcycles and a tiny Vespa car. They went around and around, sideways, clinging to the curved wall like quick buzzing insects. Katya's family and uncles and aunts were spellbound. When the show was over, the adults walked home and let the kids stay longer at the carnival. No one else noticed when Katya returned home, talked with her father, and went back with him to the Wall of Death. The stuntmen had offered her a free ride as a passenger in the Vespa car to entice others to pay. But she needed a parent's permission. Katya's mother was the school principal in a town so small that everyone knew everyone else. She would never agree to anything like that. So Katya and her father kept it a secret from the others at home. The next day at the market, her mother was stunned when the sellers and other shoppers congratulated her about how very brave Katya had been, riding in that tiny car, around and around, sideways. Their dreams on the screen. Alsace, Eastern France, 1959. In different theaters, in towns just a few miles apart, Katya and Maurice each saw the same film, Les Rendez-vous du Diable, or in English, Meetings with the Devil, by the famous filmmaker volcanologist, Harun Tazieff. They watched as Tazieff and his team climbed forbidden volcanoes, descended on ropes into the deepest craters, explored lakes of bubbling lava, braved fountains of fire, sampled molten rock, measured the heat of the earth. That was what Katya longed to do. That was the life Maurice dreamed of. Katya, teaching. Alsace, Eastern France, 1960 to 61. Once you see an eruption, you can't live without it, because it's so big, it's so strong. Katya. When she was 18, Katya finished her teacher training after 3 long years and vacationed with her family in Italy. They spent 2 days in awe at rivers of red, flowing lava on Mount Etna, the biggest volcano in Europe, and at sunset, they watched Etna cast its purple shadow into the far distance over the darkened waves of the Mediterranean.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.